Board members, we are now to item 4, our general consent calendar. This is a time, board members, where if you want something pulled from the consent calendar, I'll recognize you, and if you could reference the number, and then we'll go to a motion for general consent, to pass the general consent. So, board members, are there anything on the consent calendar that you wish to have pulled? Board member Linda Hansen.
Sorry, I'm finding it. It's the special ed. It's the second from the bottom, I think. Yeah. 414. 414.
Okay. So 414. Okay. Board member Lisa Cummins.
412.
Anything else, board members? Seeing none, I'm seeking a motion to approve the general consent calendar with items 414 and 412 being pulled. So moved. Second. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting is unanimous. Let's go to board member Hansen to 414. Do you want to speak to that? Can I get you to turn your mic back on? Okay.
Today.
Board member Linda Hansen.
I have a couple of questions for the special ed department, and they know
So
that
let's
I'm
invite-
probably going to ask them. So
Let's invite
Kim's
staff
here.
up on this. And would you turn your mic on, and then we'll state who you are, so we all have it in our recording here.
Good morning. My name is Kim Fratto. I'm a special education coordinator in our special ed services section.
Okay. Board member Linda Hansen, you had a question?
So we've been working on this. If you'll remember, last year we pulled this off and talked about this as well, because they have to check the boxes and see how we're doing with special ed. And so I wondered if you could answer for me, Kim, what you feel most proud of that you accomplished, because you did better this year. Not superb, but you're improving, and looks like we're improving. And so I wondered if you could say what you feel like you were proud of that we accomplished, and what you're still doing to maybe continue to trend upward.
Okay, sure. So we did do better. We improved overall, and we're trending in the right direction. So we are very proud of our indicator 8, parent input. So we have increased in parent input, and we've made great progress. So we have a parent input coach, the parent engagement coach, and she goes out and works with our parents and our LEAs to help engage parents. We have grants that we've put together for the parent input. She's working on some home visits to really improve the relationship between parents, and to make sure that they feel like they're meaningfully involved in their students' education and in the IEP process. So that's an area that we're very happy about. And we continue to meet in indicator 5, LRE, least restrictive environment placement. So we're happy that we continue to make progress in that area as well. A couple areas that we're really working on is our compliance, indicator 13. We're putting a lot of effort into secondary transition plans for students to make sure that we can increase performance in that area. So that's a targeted area. We've done a lot of trainings across the state with our LEA directors, with our principals in schools as well, and and with our staff, special ed staff across the state, that work in transition. So we think we're going to make some great gains in that area. We're very happy about where we're going.
Thank you. Congratulations. I just wanted to be able to highlight the fact that we're moving up.
We
And,
are.
and I know that the parental part was very concerning last year when Leah talked about it. So I'm glad to see that is improved
Yeah,
as well.
we've made great progress there. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Okay, board members, this was a APR, which is an annual performance report. So it's information, so we're not taking action on it. But it is information. Is there any other questions regarding this report? Do you have one? Okay. Board Member Lisa Cummins.
Thank you, Chair. When it comes to the assessment, what hurdles are you seeing?
Okay, so for the assessment, some of the areas that we are struggling is for the opt-out.
Okay.
So overall, our state opt-out decreased, but for students with disabilities, we did increase in parental opt-out. So and then that also affects our proficiency in ways. So for instance, the one area that we had regression in proficiency is Math 10, and we did have regression there. We had over 100 students opt out from the previous year in that grade, and so the opt-out impacts us. And then we have less opt-out in ELA, English Language Arts, than we do in math. So that's a hurdle that we face. But if we would have had 28 more students proficient in grade 10, we would not have regressed. So
Follow up.
Follow-up.
Do you know why parents are opting out specifically? Do you see problems with the test? Is the test itself a problem with special needs? Would you like to see a variation of testing for the special needs? What other hurdles are you seeing?
So that's a really good question. So we've talked with our USEAP panel, and that's our Utah Special Education Advisory Panel, about opting out. I had some great conversations with them. We've talked with our special education directors around that. We do have an alternative assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities, and we're not seeing that opt-out in that area increase. And one of the things that we think is attributing to that is that we have done a lot of training across the state with parents and teachers about that assessment. It's a dynamic learning maps assessment, and it's geared toward students with significant cognitive disabilities. And much of the improvement we've seen in that area is just communication to parents about the test, about the accommodations that their students can receive on the test, what we're measuring and what we look at and what we use that data for programming for students and to help improve their daily, educational programming and experience in schools. So a lot of it is communication around the test and having parents not just opt out on everything because they don't understand, how their student's going to be assessed and the accommodations that they might be able to receive through the assessment.
One more follow-up.
Okay.
Just really quick. And so the larger opt-out is on the rise then and not on the more specific test, correct?
Yes, that's what our current data is
Okay.
showing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions regarding this one. The next item that was pulled was 412, Utah's participation and assessment redesign project. Board Member Lisa Cummins, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just had a few questions with that.
Is Darren here? Yes. Oh, there he is.
Yes.
So we'll invite him up. And any staff? Darren, you want to introduce yourself and staff and before we ask the questions?
You bet. Thank you, Chair. Darren Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, and I have Ann Michelle Neal, who's a specialist for the Utah State Board of Education, and she also leads our work with the WIDA assessment. So we brought her up because she'll be able to hopefully address any questions that come from board members.
Okay, please proceed.
In light of the information, I'm glad it came in chronological order. In light of what we just have heard, I've known for a long time that the special needs children, students, being placed on the rise has always been a problem. And I'm glad that we're going this route. I see potential here, so that we're not, because there is no such thing as standardization in various different groups and capabilities. So, I'm glad we're going this route. But what more can you tell me about this project going forward, and how did you find out about it, and who reached out?
I'd be happy to tell you.
Sure.
There we go.
Anne Michelle Neal, accountability specialist, but also WIDA assessment specialist. This project is specifically related to the WIDA Access Assessment, which assesses students' English proficiency in the domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It's given annually and provided by WIDA for students in grades kindergarten through grade 12. There's an alternate assessment that's provided for grades 1 through 12. This came about from a few weeks ago, a conversation I was having with an LEA who called for consultation on a kindergarten student with a brain tumor that has left her completely blind. And the kindergarten assessment's very brilliant. Students engage in a story, they use cards. For example, one of the listening items might be something like, point to the man selling vegetables, or point to the woman with the baby. With this LEA, I went through domain by domain, and we looked at every accommodation possible, and just determined that because of her tumor and her blindness, that she was unable to take this assessment. This Saltella project will tackle the, thus far, very difficult task of developing an alternate assessment for students with significant disabilities in kindergarten. It will also redesign the alternate assessment for all students, and do the other thing that has been very difficult, which is how do we measure growth for our alternate population, especially for English learners. And there are varying types of disabilities and the varying kinds of things they experience. After this conversation, I went home and I kept thinking through this conversation in my head, so I emailed WIDA. And the response was pretty immediate. We have a very good relationship with WIDA. They informed me that we were being strongly considered as a partner in this project. I don't know if my email went viral in the WIDA offices, but over the next few days, they informed me that we were second in line for being the lead state on this project. Minnesota is currently fulfilling that position, and we are seeking your approval to be a partner in this work. It would give us the ability to be boots on the ground in the research, the design, and the application and implementation of this assessment for this very special population of students. I think it really aligns very well with your work as a board and your strategic plan to provide equitable educational opportunity for all students, because these assessments provide teachers with the tools to understand what kids need. And when teachers understand what kids need, our educators can deliver, and these assessments do that for them. I just want to reemphasize the importance of this special population, and that we have this opportunity to make an impact in the lives of students who, like this little girl with her tumor, and like the young man whose teacher I spoke to 2 days ago, who is a refugee and has a traumatic brain injury because his village was bombed. So this is very critical, I think, important work that we have the opportunity to engage in.
You have another follow-up, and then we've got some other.
Yes,
Another
thank you.
follow-up, and then we'll recognize other board members.
I'm very excited about this. I've never been a fan of RISE or SAGE at the time being used as a standardized test for all groups. I think it's very inequitable in that regard, and was unfair. So I'm very, very excited to see this go forward, and I'm very interested in your outcomes.
Thank you.
Board Member Earl.
So I just have a few questions, if you don't mind. This is an end-of-year assessment, beginning, middle, end? What are we looking at?
The assessment is given annually. It's given January through the beginning of March, so we are in our final week of testing right now.
Okay. And it measures,
English language proficiency. It doesn't measure content knowledge. It measures how proficient are students in using English in the domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
okay. And so we're building a writing component into it. Okay, I'm just trying to think in my mind what that looks like.
I can give you an example. For example, the way they construct the items is that to really grasp the construct of, say, speaking, they say the question might be framed as something like, what color is Colonel Mustard's brown horse? The answer's in the question, so they have to listen and comprehend. So they are able to really truly measure the construct of language rather than it be dependent on content knowledge.
Okay. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Board Member Lisa Cummins?
So in light of that, one more question. Is this on top of RISE, that they will have to do RISE as well?
This is separate from RISE. This is a requirement for students who are English learners.
Right, but will they have to do RISE as well?
They do take RISE as well.
Okay, so now my concern goes to the mental health aspect. How many assessments are these children having to take, and how much more pressure and anxiety are we putting upon these children? Now that's a bigger concern.
That's a concern.
Yeah.
I think we tried to mitigate that by staggering the testing windows that we give at mid-year versus at the same time. Again, it's a very supportive assessment that's well scaffolded and something that's very interactive with students. I don't hear a lot of feedback from the field that it's a challenging or they have difficulty motivating students to participate.
I wonder if you could ask if they see any heightened anxiety. We're in a testing season where anxiety and depression are sky high, and students are more susceptible to possibly committing.
Sure.
And so I'm very concerned on this aspect that we're just adding another test. Whether it's good or not, it's just another test.
We've been part of the WIDA Consortium since 2010. We've been, our first administration of this assessment was in 2012, 2013, I believe. So this isn't an additional assessment, it's rather a revision and an improvement of what we've already been doing.
Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
Just a question for clarity. I believe there's 5 levels on the WIDA. At what level does a student have to get to in order to take the RISE assessment or the SAGE?
All students take the RISE or the Utah Aspire Plus assessment, regardless of where they are in their English proficiency. In their first year, they are only counted for proficiency. In their second year, we calculate growth. That first year is used to establish a baseline, but we don't count them in accountability or hold the school responsible for their proficiency until their third year of enrollment, until they've had 3 years of good instruction in English. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I'm not seeing any other comment or question. Well, Board Member Davis.
Sorry, just to clarify. So students who are taking the UA don't also take the RISE. So that's a separate population. Is this expanding? You're shaking like you can answer my question for me. So answer my question. Am I right or am I wrong? The students that were taking the UA weren't also taking end of year assessments. So are we talking about an expanded?
That actually is an important
population?
clarification. That this population who takes the alternate access that this project specifically is targeting participate in the UA and DLM. They are our alternate population. We have about, I would say 40% of our alternate population takes regular access. They are able to access the regular assessment. So it's not every kid who takes DLM or UA also takes the alternate access. IEP teams and ELP teams make those decisions.
Can you give us a percentage? Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the past, it's been like 1% taking the UA, right? And now there's the DLM and the other. What percentage are we looking at total taking all of this, what you're talking about?
The alternate access assessment.
And so I'm assuming out of whatever you tell us, then 1% will not also participate in the RISE,
Let me
as
see.
in the past.
Go ahead, Darren.
Oh, sorry.
Am I not asking it well?
Let me restate what I think you're asking
Okay.
about, because I'm not sure, because we've been talking about the WIDA, but this project is specifically for the alternate portion of the WIDA. So the WIDA is administered to all of our English language students who haven't exited the program. So the scores of 1 through 5 that Board Member Cummins talked about, within that scope, about 1% of those students would also be eligible for the alternate, or students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Those where it got a little blurry, I think, as we responded to Board Member Cummins' question, we were still talking about the
Yes.
WIDA in whole,
Okay,
the
I'm
entirety
with you
of the test. But when we talk specifically about the alternate, the students who would qualify, not 100%, but generally pretty consistently that qualify for the alternate academic assessments would also be taking, if they're in the WIDA population or eligible to take the WIDA test, then they would take the alternate WIDA in most cases.
Can I speak
gotcha.
to that? just
You've got a
briefly?
follow-up.
Okay.
You don't have a follow-up?
How many students are we talking about? What percentage of our students are we talking about being involved in the WIA?
I believe it's at 400 to 500 per year. It's
Now,
been the trend.
that's the alternate
In
WIDA.
the alternate assessment. Our last year, we had 46,000 students take WIDA assessment. We have 46,000 English learners taking the WIDA assessment statewide, and about 400 to 500 of those students take the alternate.
So it would behoove us to have a voice.
It
I'm
would.
thinking with those kind of numbers.
Board Member Earl?
Thank you. So my question becomes time commitment. How much time are these children that are taking these alternate assessments spending taking assessments? So a normal child that would fall into this category throughout, maybe the spring is the question, because that's when most of them are offered. They're not offered twice a year, right? So what time frame are we looking at? How much of a
For the alternate assessment, it's given one-on-one. It takes about an hour to administer the assessment. That's for the WIDA alternate access.
alternate access? And then they would be taking, from what I understand, the RISE as well, so that would
Later
be-
on, they
yeah.
would be taking DLM. Let me clarify that one
Okay.
requirement for students to be eligible to take alternate access is that they also qualify for DLM and UA. So they are that 1% most significant cognitive disabilities population.
Okay, and what are we committing specifically, just to be part of this?
We're committing to be a research partner. Much of that is laid out in board docs for you in the
Okay.
background information. There's no financial commitment, but that we would have access to resources and be one of the states that they would partner with to do the development of this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Board Member Ellis?
Thank you. Thank you for taking so many questions. So the WIDA is, just for clarification, is not a Utah-developed test that we offer.
That's
And,
correct.
But we could make the decision whether or not to offer it to the students. And so if we see the final product, we could have input then. And this is part of our opt-out form, isn't it? Is it?
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, that was quite a few questions. Thank you for answering them. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. This item has been pulled from our consent, and it was or is an actionable item. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
I move that we approve this item.
We have a motion to approve
I lost it, sorry.
the Utah participation in assessment redesign project, which is shown under 4.12. Discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting is unanimous.